I'm not certain how many times the cameras for our little corner will be across the lake in the state of Vermont, but we're here today on a day that has produced a tiny bit of sunshine, the last day of September in 1997. And our purpose for coming here today is to show you and to show me a little bit of Isle La Motte, Father Boucher, St. Anne Shrine. Before meeting Father Boucher and finding out about the history of this fantastic place, we decided to come here to view a rather weather-worn map that Calvin remembered from a trip here to the thriving metropolis of Isle La Motte a couple of years ago. And we stopped in front of the rather aged municipal building in the town of Isle La Motte and already have discovered some of the charm of this island and this community. I love it over here, and you can bet that Kay and I, and maybe even Calvin, will tag along to visit here once again after today. There are a number of historic places here. You started off by seeing part of the Isle La Motte Free Public Library next door. Across the road is the fire station, and on this map are listed probably about 50 significant places here in Isle La Motte. And the North Country history is rather entwined with the history of Isle La Motte, we find out when we started reading. Unfortunately, the legend, which is printed on the side of the building, is also rather weather-worn. And I think even more than that, somebody missed a little bit when they spray painted the black frame and covered off some of the significant numbers. However, we received a copy from the inside, and we're going to tax our sight because these are little teeny tiny letters. But I'm going to read them, and this will be a test in balance, because Calvin's going to try to find the numbers as I'm reading them. Hopefully he's focusing somewhere near number 1 as I read off some of the places on the illustrated map of Isle La Motte. Number 1 is certainly important because it's Samuel de Champlain landing on Isle La Motte, July 1609. The first white man in Lake Champlain and to set foot on Vermont soil. Commemorative granite statue stands at the shore. Visitors could find that if you ever plan to travel over here, and we kind of hope you do. Number 2 is something we learned about from our friend Jim Saborski as we did a program on battlements and fortifications concerning the Battle of Plattsburgh, the War of 1812. This is the site of Fort St. Anne, Vermont's oldest settlement, built by Captain Pierre La Motte in 1666, and the name, of course, applies to the shrine which we'll be visiting on our program today. Number 3 is the object of our quest, St. Anne Shrine. Mass held here on July 26, 1666, the first observance of Christian worship in Vermont. Number 4 on our map is the monument commemorating General Montgomery, whose name may be familiar to people interested in North Country history. He camped nearby with 1,200 men, August 31st through September 4th, 1775. And the monument also honors Colonel Seth Warner and Captain Remember Baker. What a wonderful name, Captain Remember Baker. Now let's zip down to number 8, where we have a replica of a British warship shortly before the Battle of Plattsburgh Bay in 1814. Those people who watch this program, who go to school or have any interest in the North Country at all, are very much aware of that battle when it happened in the morning of September 11th, 1814. That's number 8. Now we'll skip down to number 11. And number 11 on this map is part of Caleb Hill's Tavern. Obviously, the tavern is named after Calvin's son, Caleb. That's a joke, by the way. Part of Caleb's Hill Tavern, license granted in 1808. And on the license it says, and I'm quoting again, "Keep a public house of entertainment." That's what the license was granted for. By the way, Hill was shot in his own tavern in 1814 during a skirmish with the British sailors. We'll move down to number 12 now, and this is interesting because it's a monument to a nearby burying yard point. The reason it's named the Burying Yard Point is because it's where the earliest settlers of Isle La Motte are buried, and you can visit that site as well. As a matter of fact, when you come here, I would suggest you drop into this municipal building here in Isle La Motte and pick up this map. I have a copy of it in my hand, and visit all of the sites, many of which we won't have time to mention today. But let's find number 35, which also would be of great interest to me, because number 35 would be the burial place of British sailors from the sunken ship after the Battle of Plattsburgh Bay in 1814. How many knew? How many people viewing this program today would even be aware that the British sailors who were killed in that battle were buried here in Isle La Motte? I, for one, did not. Skipping down to number 40, this is one that Calvin pointed out to me, and this is very significant. I would think it's the site of Deer Park. And it just happens that Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, whose picture you can see, some clever person, has a little monocle and mustache and the way he parted his hair in the middle, he was notified of McKinley's assassination while he was at a Fish and Game League dinner here on September 6th, 1901. I did not know that. Calvin remembered that Teddy Roosevelt had some significance here and visited the place. Well, this should whet your appetite enough to keep you from pushing that button that changes channel on your television dial. And I think before we leave this spot, Calvin should just swing around a little bit and take another picture of the cannon, because he and I have decided when we arrived here that if we're going to work it out electronically through your television set, so if you do change the dial anytime in the next 89.5 minutes, the cannon will fire and part of your roof will be blown into Lake Champlain. So stay with us for a little while today. We're going to have some fun at Isle La Motte and St. Anne's Shrine. Our program will continue in just a moment. As promised, our little corner continues at St. Anne's Shrine. What a pleasure for me to be here and to meet you, Father Maurice Boucher.
Great pleasure to meet you, too. Once again, I've met you before.
It's wonderful to be here, and when this program is seen, the snow will be probably about 4 feet deep across St. Anne's Shrine.
We'll think of how wonderful and how nice and warm it was here this summer. We've had a nice summer, a beautiful summer.
It's a beautiful fall day today. As a matter of fact, the good Lord gave us a little bit of sunshine, just enough to make it worth our while. Before we even begin our interview, I told Calvin a little story I heard on the radio this morning about a young lady who had been to church and saw on the bulletin board out front the following message: where would you like to spend eternity? Smoking or non-smoking?
Smoking.
Isn't that amazing?
No, I think I'd rather have non-smoking.
I thought that was a cute story, and that I thought would break the ice for our interview today. Father, how long have you been here?
And this is my 37th year here at the shrine. And of course, it's always been a second position for me. It's never been the only work I had. Like I'm presently pastor of St. Amadeus and St. Joseph's Mission, and I've been, and this is my 22nd year as pastor.
This is a day of discovery for me. I've heard so much about St. Anne's Shrine. I have promoted the pilgrimages here on the radio for 35 years. This is my first chance to get here, and I promise you it won't be the last. This is a very special place.
How about that, man? You haven't been here before.
This is it.
If I had known that, I would have gone after you.
Never mind. You'll be here a long time, and I'll be back when I tell my wife about this. So give me a little bit of your personal history, Father.
Well, I was born a good many years ago. I just celebrated my 75th birthday.
Wonderful.
I was born in Canada, actually, a little town called Saint Sabine near Farnham, Quebec. And my folks immigrated when I was just 2 months old. And my mother carried me in a little basket and would bring me down in front of the cows to keep me warm while she helped Dad milk the cows.
Yeah.
That was their first winter.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then, of course, I went to grammar school in Highgate. I went to high school in Swanton and went to St. Michael's College. And it's there that I decided to become an Edmondite father. The Edmondites run this, they own this shrine and they operate it. And I've been here since 1956, except for 3 or 4 summers. Then I came back in 1969.
You left for how long now?
4 summers. I came back in the 5th summer.
You couldn't stay away, could you?
The Lord wanted me here. I guess that's the only way you can explain
when you
it.
hear the call, you got to go.
That-
You better go.
That's right.
So you've enjoyed your stay here, and I imagine you have had so many experiences. We could never get them in a 90-minute television program, but you've obviously met thousands of wonderful people.
Well, our motto is here is the center of life, God's life, of love, Jesus is love, and of light, the light of the Holy Spirit. And our main purpose in the shrine here is to bring people to God and God to people. And with nature, with the water, with the plants, the flowers, the trees, the birds, the dog and the cat, we try to do that. And I think we're quite successful.
And just as you said that, a ray of sunshine swept over the top of the camera. And if anybody viewing thinks Father doesn't have some pull up there, they are absolutely wrong. I heard you had a wonderful dog for a few years here.
Yes.
Now, well, that dog's name wasn't Tosca, was it?
It was Tosca, and Tosca was a basset hound and a collie, a mixture, and was just a beautiful animal. And unfortunately, she didn't like little children, so we had to have her put to rest because we didn't want to take a chance of an accident, you know.
She followed you everywhere.
And followed me everywhere.
Even up on the altar, I heard.
And protected me. Yes, a funny thing happened when the bishop was here one time, and it was hot, and she was drinking water out of the holy water font. And the bishop said, "We have the holiest dog in the state of Vermont. Not only is she Catholic, but she also drinks holy water."
Well, we found out when I drove here today, Calvin had already prepped me for the area, but when I drove in here, I knew it was a wonderful place. It feels good here.
It's holy ground. People bring their goodness, and they leave some of their goodness here. Everyone who comes leaves a little bit of his or her goodness, and of course that accumulates over the years. The place is really a holy place.
And I imagine a great many people who visit here from states and counties other than this one come back and bring their children and bring their parents.
Yeah, interestingly enough, there was a couple here from Detroit, Michigan last week, and they hadn't been here in 5 years, and they just marveled at what we've done in these 5 years. And of course, what we've done through the grace of God, through God's help, and the help of all those wonderful people who come. It's just marvelous to see how they appreciate the natural beauty and the natural goodness of the place.
Well, we have just a moment, and I know you have to say a Mass in a few minutes. Let's start with a little bit of the history of St. Anne's Shrine. How did it ever get started?
Well, in 1666, the French came down from Canada. They thought they were in Canada, and they were actually in the United States, and they built Fort St. Anne. Pierre de La Motte was their leader, and the fort lasted 2 or 3 years, and then, of course, it was destroyed. This was as a fortification against the Indians, and they had some tough winters here. The first winter they were here, and the shrine then lay dormant until 1892, when a Father Curly-Dew, a French priest, came here as pastor of St. Amadeus and St. Joseph's, and he started doing some digging here, and the bishop asked him, Bishop de Gosbrian, asked him if he would rebuild St. Anne's Shrine. And this is how it came. And the Edmondites took it over about 1902, and we have been here ever since.
How does it sustain itself?
Very well, actually. The Lord is good. All our friends and benefactors and supporters come, and the people who come in the summer, we're able to do quite well, especially since we have the new statue, a statue that used to be on the cathedral, came here a few years ago, and ever since then, it seems as though our financial problems are few. Thanks be to God for that.
Isn't that amazing and wonderful? We'll continue our interview with Father Boucher right here at St. Anne's Shrine in Isle La Motte in just a minute.
Nice little lunch. Food was good.
Well, once again, through the miracle of television, yes, we had a nice little lunch. We went to Mass, so we're full in spirit and full in body at St. Anne's Shrine. And look who we ran into on the deck and inside. Area 1 legislator Celine Paquette from Clinton County in the Northern Tier. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you, Gordy.
I didn't realize until today your very close association with this place. First of all, let's begin by telling people why you were here today. Very special occasion.
Today was the 5th anniversary of my husband Larry's death, and I had a mass said for him today.
And what a wonderful, intimate mass it was. It's so, as I told Calvin over lunch, how nice it is to go to a small mass like that.
Yes, absolutely. Father makes it very special, and in our new building we have the prayer room where mass is said, so this is really special.
You and I, she didn't want to go on camera, but you and I have so much to talk about in your association with this place, which goes back to your marriage and maybe even before.
Yes, Larry and I were both on the board of directors here at the Shrine before we were married, and we were married here at the Shrine in 1987. And then we continued as members of the board, and after Larry's death I continued and we put up this new building. I'm still on the board and I'm a member of the finance committee. So
building this building, now that was a very short story Celine just told you, but getting this building planned and built took a little longer than that, and there were some tough times along the way, weren't there?
Absolutely. This was Father's dream. He always said to us, I want a multi-purpose building for inclement weather and for special occasions. And Larry would nudge me during Mass and say, there he goes again. Well, he finally convinced the board, and Dr. Tortolano, who was chairman of the board at the time, said, let's do it. And that began our journey with this building. And the first thing we had to do was select an architect. We interviewed several and settled on one from Montpelier, Jay Ansel. So that worked out very well. Unfortunately, Larry died before we even started this project, but
he was watching us then and he's watching us now.
Absolutely.
And you know it as well as I do.
Absolutely.
And that's why you're over here today.
That's right.
It's amazing. As we talked to Father a while ago and asked him about this building, he said, no, you know, they didn't want to go into a debt for $1 million. And I told him, don't worry about it.
He always says that. He always says that. The Lord will provide. That's his favorite saying.
And thanks to a lot of hard work by a bunch of people like Celine Paquette, he did provide.
Well, we had a good board and we had a good building committee. I have to give credit to our chairman, Brian Wrigley, and to John Coolidge from Shazy and myself. We worked hard. But
Celine, you know, I'm certain there are a great many people in Clinton, Essex, and Franklin counties where this television program will be aired on all the public access channels who never heard of Gordy Little and who never heard of Calvin Castine or Celine Paquette. And that's why we're here today talking. But I think it's more important than any of the three of us is to introduce them to this place, which is magical and special in many ways.
Magical, special, historical. Was the site of the former Fort St. Anne in the 1600s. We do know that Bishop Laval was here ministering to French soldiers who were dying of smallpox. This is very historical. The Indians were here before that, the Native Americans. And we are still honoring their healing grounds where our Stations of the Cross are located.
No matter who you are and what faith you have to start with, I've been convinced before I ever visited here today, and I'm convinced even more so now after attending Mass here, that once you visit St. Anne's Shrine, you will not leave quite the same as when you drove in.
Absolutely. Father sees to it that you're transformed.
He's a very special guy, and
Yes.
you must work hard to keep him here for a long, long time.
We have worked hard to keep him here.
And
We
he's
are
here.
working hard, and he is here. And next year he celebrates his 50th anniversary as a priest, and we're looking forward to that.
We want our hometown cameras right there at that very time. You can count on that. Celine, thanks so much for taking a moment with us today.
Thank you.
Best of luck in everything you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We'll continue our little tour of St. Anne's Shrine in Isle La Motte in just a minute. Well, we've moved along to another end of the building, as you can see, after our fine interview with Celine Paquette, whose sister, Father, is responsible for these beautiful stained-glass windows. This is the most incredible building.
On this end of the building and also on the west side, she came in from Chicago and she had ordered all these windows and she saw to it that they were properly installed. Unbelievable, yeah.
You know, this story of conceiving this building and standing here with it being completed and having looked at it from the inside out is an amazing story. We never know where the road is going to go when we start walking down, do we?
We talked about an all-purpose building some years ago, and it took a good many years to even raise a few $1,000s. And the Lord said, let me help you. And so we had a fire in the cafeteria, and from that came this new building. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Yeah. We call this building a miracle and a mystery.
I love it. And when I interviewed Celine, you were standing nearby but didn't hear every word. And I said, Father said when people said, you can't raise that amount of money, Father said, don't worry about it.
That's right.
She said that's what he always says. Don't worry about it.
That's right. The Lord has his way, and he wanted the building here, and we have it, and we're so blessed. We can only thank God for all the benefactors. If it wasn't for the benefactors, of course, the building wouldn't be. And so many wonderful benefactors.
So besides this wonderful little chapel here, and the cafeteria we were just in and had a fine lunch, by the way, what else happens in this building? What other rooms do you have?
Downstairs, we're going to have an all-purpose building, and the all-purpose building will take care of people, especially when it rains. For picnics, people come and it starts to rain, they have no place to go. So now instead of using the upper cafeteria, we'll use the downstairs. And of course, when it's like this past Sunday, when it's cold, we use a little chapel here, but sometimes the crowd is too big, so we'll have to use it downstairs. It's going to be an all-purpose building. We'll move chairs there and tables, and we'll move them around according to the need.
Let's talk about the season here at St. Anne's Shrine in Isle La Motte. By the time this program is aired, hopefully fairly close to Christmas time, the season here will be closed, but how long does it run?
We go from May 15th to October 15th. But people cheat on both ends. They're usually here in April, and they'll come till December, till the snow flies, and we leave some of the facilities open so that they can use them. But they'll come. If we didn't close,
if you build it, they will come.
That's right. And we're blessed because they have great faith in St. Anne, and they don't want to give up their devotion.
It's a wonderful place, and we'll continue our tour in just a moment. And we've moved about 100 yards away from the end of that beautiful all-purpose building we were just talking about. And what have we got here, Father?
Well, we have a number of grottos, and these grottos came quite accidentally. The one right over here, St. Anthony, the statue was in the hallway in the building, in the office building, and an Italian lady came and she said, my Tony, what is he doing here?
Come on.
I said, well, you know what, if you give us some funds, we'll build a grotto for Tony, and for St. Anthony, then we built a grotto, and here he is. And the other statues are pretty much the same thing. We have St. Joseph, the Sacred Heart, St. Francis, St. Patrick. St. Patrick came from the cathedral in Burlington. That's one of the last ones that we received. And people are very happy. They recognize him from the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Burlington. So each saint has a little story, and people have great devotion to each of the saints.
Every foot on the grounds of this wonderful place has a story. And all these little grottos, what a tremendous treasure for people to come and pray.
This used to be a cow pasture here, and we've come a long way.
I wondered why you were picking your feet up as we came across.
Oh, that's
a long time ago.
That happened a long time ago.
Okay.
but it's nice that we've been able to develop it, and it's each inch of ground is precious, and the people really appreciate being able to come here and to, especially to pray to their favorite saint.
Do we have any idea how many people visit St. Anne's Shrine in the course of a year?
I would say about 65 to 70,000 people a year.
Wow.
Judging from the number of people who come here on Sundays and each weekday, and especially on Saturdays also for weddings and other reunions, we have, I'd say, about 60 to 70,000 people.
I can imagine there would be many people from Vermont, but I'm sure there are quite a few from northern New York and southern Canada.
Northern New York is just wonderful, and the people there are so wonderful and so faithful. And all over the United States, but Canada, we also have a great number from Canada who come. I would say probably 1/3 of our attendance comes from Canada.
And as we'll show people later on, a lot of your masses are held outside in the summertime.
Yes, we have the open air church, and it's beautiful to see those people coming on Saturday night, 7 o'clock, and then Sunday morning, 8:30, 10, 11:30, and 4 on Sunday afternoon.
Hopefully, well, when this program airs in December, we will inspire whole families and grandparents and grandchildren and uncles and aunts and cousins to make some plans for the next season starting in May to come over and visit Father, who's going to be here for at least another 30 or 35 years.
You're a dreamer.
I want to, never mind next year for your 50th. I want to be here for your 100th.
God bless you. That's a good wish.
We're going to continue our tour of St. Anne's Shrine in Isle La Motte in just a few moments. Isle La Motte is a wonderful place with a charm that exudes the minute you drive over here. Especially if you were brought up in a big city somewhere with the hustle and bustle and the lights and sounds, if you want to get back to square one, just take a ride over here to Isle La Motte and stop over at St. Anne's Shrine. Boy, sometimes we have to go back to the first square to get a little balance in our life, Father, and what a place to do it right here.
As people come down the hill, they say there's certainly some supernatural divine influence which exists here, and I'm convinced of that. This is a spiritual place. From its very beginning, with the chapel, the first Mass in the state of Vermont was said here. And of course we continue the tradition of bringing people to God and God to people.
And what a fulfilling experience it must be for you to be an instrument toward that end.
Well, every day is exciting because that's what we're here for, to journey to God, and if we can help each other on that journey, the happier we are, and that's what we do here at the shrine.
Father, before we describe the statue behind us, I want to get a little more about your background in an order that I had never heard about. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yes, in my choice of college, I joined St. Michael's College, and I had a scholarship there from the Edmondites, intending to join the priesthood, and I joined the Edmondite orders. We were founded in about 1843 in France, and our priests were exiled from France in 1892, and we came to Vermont, and then in 1902 we took this little shrine here. We're a small order. Our headquarters are in Winooski, Vermont now. There's about 75 of us, and it's a very closely knit order, and this is how come I'm at St. Anne's Shrine, because I belong to the order, and the order is the proprietor of the shrine. And so I work here as an Edmondite, also as a priest in the Diocese of Burlington.
And you told me as we were walking over here before we turned the cameras on again that you're going to celebrate your 50th anniversary next year, and there aren't too many people left from that class.
You know, it's interestingly enough, there were 6 of us ordained on May 22nd, 1948. They were all Irish priests. I was the only French priest, and Father Little Stapleton, Conley, Charlie Fitzpatrick, and Francis Hickey, and they've all died. I'm the only one left. And so I'll be thanking God for these wonderful years, if it's His will that I celebrate in the spring.
There's a little extra beam from up there shining down on you today. And you've been left as the torchbearer, and you're doing a beautiful job at it, I might add.
Well, that beam is on every day, and I feel that God has been extremely good to me. My order has been good to me, and the diocese. We have a wonderful bishop, and he's a great supporter of the shrine and of the work that's being done here.
Father, describe this statue behind us.
The statue came to us a few years ago. It was stored in the storage room in Burlington for 20 years. And
Come on.
Yeah, I was in
What a story.
I was in Haverstraw, New York, and there's a grotto there at a shrine. And I came back and I wrote to the diocese, and I didn't hear from them. And I wrote again about 3 or 4 months later, and they said, "Send us your plans." And then we sent them the plans in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, the statue was here. And then 6 weeks later, we had the foundation and we put up the statue.
That had to be quite a little project all by itself.
Oh, it was wonderful, but we had a lot of help, a lot of volunteers, and we're so grateful. And the Blessed Mother she wanted to be here with her mother, the mother and the grandmother together. It's a great source of blessing for us to have the statue here.
And you wonder why this is a special place. You talk about hallowed ground.
That's right, with St. Anne and the Blessed Mother, and of course all our other saints here on the hill. And so people come and they have great devotion to Mary, and she's highly, highly loved and respected.
And here we are, less than 200 feet away from the shores of Lake Champlain. It's a cool day at the end of September, but no matter what kind of day it is, it's a great day to be alive, isn't it?
You know, this lake is a beautiful lake, and people who come from out of state and out of the country, they all admire its great beauty, and it also brings serenity and calmness. People who come here are touched by the waves on the beach.
You know, I've always felt I live about 18 inches away from the Saranac River, west of Plattsburgh, in a tiny community called Morrisonville. And I've always said, if I can be near water, every now and then, I'm going to be okay. So when I moved there, I felt as though I'm okay.
We can hear the waves from the lake when we have masses in the open-air church, and as a soothing, calming effect. The Lord certainly loved water, and all who come here, they love the water too.
You know, it wasn't really my plan to bring out my soapbox, but it seems that when Calvin gets his camera out, I get my soapbox out, and every now and again I have to preach to people, and it's easy with a guy like you, because you were born to do this, but it's important for people to discover the meaning of the word serenity in this crazy world we live in.
Yes, we live in a noisy, very turmoiled world, and we need calm and peace. And I think that's one of the things, one of the elements that brings so many people here. It's the serenity and the peace and the calmness. And we try, the staff and myself and all the clergy, we try to instill that. We have 2 wonderful priests who help us here. A Father Sullivan, who's retired diocesan priest, and a Father Fredette. He's a Norbertine priest, and they bring that calm and that peace also.
Not a bad way to start every day, is it? Huh?
Another day to live, another day to love. That's what I say every morning, and everybody I meet, I try to instill that in them.
He's got that smile, doesn't he? Oh, what a guy. We're going to continue our tour of St. Anne's Shrine, and what a wonderful day it is to be here in just a moment. Well, Father, the minute you and I and Calvin walked across the road onto the shores of beautiful Lake Champlain, a 35-mile-an-hour wind gust came through, and maybe it's the Holy Spirit, huh?
It gives us an idea of how we have to be prepared for different types of weather here. If the wind is not blowing, wait a few minutes, it'll blow.
That's what we always say about the North Country. If you don't like the weather today, stick around. It'll be a little bit different.
It'll change, and it really does. We have to be prepared here. This is why this new building is so handy, because we can then move there if it's cold or if it's windy or rainy.
You've got a nice little picnic area and a nice little beachfront here.
Very nice, and we use it a lot in the summer. On warm days, the place is just jam-packed.
People come by the busloads, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yeah, we've had more busloads this year than we have had in recent years. We've been getting 2 in the evening, almost every evening since the middle of September. So the bus attendance has increased.
Well, this is a beautiful spot along Lake Champlain today, and now the wind is letting up just a little bit. You told me a few moments ago, again as we were walking across the road here, that you had some flooding here one year recently.
Yes, we have been the victims of floods probably 4 or 5 times in the past 10 or 12 years. The water goes over the road, and it floods our open-air church.
Thank goodness everything looks wonderful now. Those trees across the road that we passed, you said many of them you've planted over the last 10 or 15 years, and you're planting more as we see small ones right near where we stand today.
That's right. It's very important that we have trees, and so every year we try to plant a few. Years ago we planted 8 or 10 a year.
How much property do you have here? I don't think we've told our viewers.
We have 13 acres of land on the lake. Beautiful piece of property.
And even though it still maintains that wonderful peace and serenity you were talking about, there are always ideas going on as to how to make the place a little bit better.
Well, you have to improve every year, and we try to do that. People make suggestions, and we try to follow some of them. Can't follow them all, but can follow some of them.
It's a wonderful place, and we'll talk a lot more about it as we continue our tour of St. Anne's Shrine in Isle La Motte with Father Boucher in just a few moments. We started our program by talking about Fort St. Anne, and we're standing on that ground now, aren't we, Father?
That's right. This is where the old fort was built in 1666 by the French soldiers. Pierre de la Motte was their leader, and this is how the town of Isle La Motte was named. It used to be called Vineyard, but then they changed it to Isle La Motte, basing themselves on Pierre de la Motte, the founder of the fort.
And I understand that this at one time was perhaps an Indian meeting place.
That's right, and you see there's a little a piece of land that juts out into the lake, and it was a natural landing place for the Indians and their canoes. And of course the same thing happened with the French when they came by boat from Canada. They landed here. That was a natural spot for them.
You can almost feel the history all around you, can't you?
That's right, yes. And we have a model of the old fort inside the building in the history room, and it's very interesting to see how they built it with a little hospital and the kitchen and the place for all the soldiers' sleeping quarters, even a hospital.
And this place now is used for the Stations of the Cross.
That's right. We've dug up the stones, and we have used little crosses for each station, a memorial of the life and death of Christ when he was here on earth.
Before we move on and get a little more of the history here and get another good look at the St. Anne Shrine, let's talk a little bit more, if you don't mind, on this windy day, about the history of St. Anne as it applies to the Catholic faith.
Well, in 1892, this Father Curlew came, and he did some digging, and then he built a little chapel here, and then this little chapel was destroyed by fire, and this present chapel was built, and it has attracted thousands and thousands. A place of pilgrimage has always existed in the history of mankind, and so this is an oasis in the Diocese of Burlington, and also for northern New York and for Canada. We're close to Canada, so people come here to renew and to strengthen their faith, especially the sick, the suffering, and the dying, and families who need help.
And as you mentioned a few moments ago, St. Anne, of course, was the mother of Mary, and that's why she holds such an important place.
That's right, the grandmother of Jesus, and as we know, grandmothers are very important.
Ask my wife. She would have to agree.
That's right, and grandfathers too. We can't forget.
Oh, thanks, Father.
We can't forget St. Joachim, the husband of Anne, and so both are honored here. And of course, when we bring Christ to people and people to Christ, then the faith increases. And this is one of the great factors here, is that we bring people to God and God to people.
Do you ever get phone calls and letters and correspondence from people who've been moved by their visits to St. Anne?
Oh, we have tremendous witnesses who write to us. I received some letters this morning, and it's just very edifying and inspiring. Sure, they come and they find something here. Many of them rediscover God whom they've lost.
You can't do any better than that.
That's right. And so it's a great privilege for all of us who are here to be able to help people to rediscover the Lord. It's a great apostolate. It's called the evangelization and re-evangelization. And we have to reach a generation that we've lost between ages 22 and 42. And we're getting to touch them.
And maybe we can inspire a few young men to enter the priesthood at a time when this is one of the most critical concerns of the church.
This is one of our prayers here daily, that young people will be inspired to the sisterhood, to the brotherhood, and to the priesthood. It's very important. We need replacements. We need people to substitute for us, because someday the Lord's going to call us back to Himself.
I told you how long it was going to be in your case, so don't give me a hard time. If somebody watching this program, Father, would like to write out a check for $25,000 or $50,000 for St. Anne Shrine, you wouldn't discourage that either, would you?
I would bless them and praise them and thank them for the rest of my life.
And how would they get in touch with you if they want to make some kind of contribution?
Write to St. Anne Shrine, Isle La Motte, Vermont, 05463. And we're always glad to hear from people. And we say, God bless them and God watch over them, and St. Anne be with them.
And as you said before, you have so many benefactors, some people you're not even familiar with who want to help you.
That's right. They're wonderful. And you know what? When people see that you're touching people, they're even more generous, and they're more willing to help, because they know that their funds will be used with discretion, with love, and with faith.
And as I mentioned before, or maybe I didn't mention it carefully enough, people of all faiths can get something out of a visit to St. Anne Shrine.
Just this morning we had people of non-Catholic faith, and they're happy to be here to get this peace and serenity, which is typical of St. Anne Shrine.
So sometimes we spend so much time trying to defend our dogmas that we forget to realize what religious faith is all about, and this is a good place for that discovery tour, as Father called it before.
A deep conviction that there is a God, and that He sent His Son, and the Son had a grandmother and a mother, and that they all work together.
Isn't this a special guy, huh? A special person on the face of this earth. We're going to continue our tour of St. Anne Shrine in Isle La Motte with Father Boucher in just a moment. Even though we're at St. Anne Shrine, this statue is of the man who is the center of it all.
That's right, Jesus crucified. In some ways, I could be called a scavenger. I heard that they had this crucifix at St. Mary's Church in St. Albans, and it was doing nothing there, and the pastor wanted to place it where it'd be useful, so we went and got it, and we made a base for it, and we got a piece of water pipe, of well pipe, and we erected it, and it serves as a wonderful testimonial to the great love of Jesus for mankind.
Boy, I'll tell you, if you can scrounge like that, you can keep that up for a long, long time, Father. It's wonderful.
It's a great source of blessing, and it's nice to have it here in the way of the cross.
Well, we're in another part of the grounds here at St. Anne Shrine in Isle La Motte, and talk a little bit about this wonderful statue.
At Expo 1967, the states had different little places where they would work on the product of their state. And of course, Vermont is known as the granite state. And so this granite statue of Champlain was sculpted by a man by the name of Weber from Barrie, Vermont. And the statue was completed in 67. And in 1968, the legislature passed a law that it would be brought here to St. Anne's Shrine. And it was erected in 1969. And so it's just a wonderful testimony of the confidence that the state had in the shrine and in the future, the possibility of having the statue here.
Now, you were here at that time.
Actually, I came back. I came back for the dedication. I came back the following year and was reassigned here. I had left for a few years, but returned in 1969.
The only thing missing there is a little view of Champy sticking his head out around the backside of the... because Samuel de Champlain is supposedly saw a sea creature here in Lake Champlain, and that started the legend of the Lake Champlain monster.
You know what? I just assume not comment too much on that, so I won't get myself involved in a controversy. Let's say it is possible.
Who knows? And it's fun to talk about things anyway, and anything we can use to bring tourists here to this part of the North Country, we'll just do it any way we can. Speaking of Samuel de Champlain, some people who may have tuned in this edition of Our Little Corner a few minutes late may have missed our original introduction as we stood in front of the municipal building in Isle La Motte and read down some of the places of interest. And not only did we see a lot of wonderful stone buildings based on the granite here in the state of Vermont, but we talked about Samuel de Champlain and the fact, Father, that he stepped off here on this island somewhere near here.
Yeah, history tells us that he came to the islands, and that the description, according to history, certainly indicates that it was Isle La Motte and it was a sandy beach which we have here. And so we hold to that, and we hope historians will not prove us otherwise.
It's amazing to me that every time we step, we don't hear sentences and voices from the past, because every inch of this ground has a piece of history from one time period or another.
You know, it's a very historical place, and every inch of it certainly was touched by the Indians or by the French, and we try to adhere to the historical aspect as much as we possibly can. We hope we're correct, but if we're not, after a while we become correct.
Let them come back and haunt us and tell us about it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until I came here today that Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, happened to be here for a very special meeting of Fish and Game Clubs in 1901 when he got the word that President McKinley had been shot.
That's right, and of course you can imagine on a small island like this how much of an experience it was and what excitement it brought to the whole island, to the whole state. I guess he didn't stay very long. He headed out shortly after he got the news.
I would imagine he did. Now, where are we standing? Can you tell me?
We're standing now in front of the A-frame, and this A-frame was set up by benefactors from New York City who ran a business. They helped get material for the $64,000 question. And we use this as a place where we can burn votive lights. And it's important because people, after they leave, they like to have the light burn in their name for their intention and for their special ones, especially loved ones.
So this has been here, this A-frame, for a little while.
Been here since 1957, actually. It's been here for 57, 58. We built it shortly after I arrived here the first time.
You mentioned a $64,000 question. That wasn't yesterday, you know.
No, I know, but I think those of us who have gray hair, we remember that.
It's hard to tell. I have so few hairs left, it's hard to tell what color it is. Calvin's the young scout here today, but fortunately for Calvin and for the rest of us, I guess, he's always the one that's holding the camera, so we never get to see what he looks like. Every time I do one of these programs, my friends call up and say, "You talk about Calvin. Is he an imaginary character like Harvey?" No, I say he's the guy that carries that camera around and who masterminds this entire program on Hometown Cable, and he's the guy that tells Father and I where to stand to get the best view.
He does a good job. He was here on Saturday night for a liturgy, and he came back again for the 10 o'clock liturgy on Sunday morning with the children's choir, and we're anxious to see his audio-visual. That'll be wonderful.
It'll be great.
And we're grateful to him for his wonderful work.
I told you this was a warm place. We've been filming here since about 10:30 in the morning, and it's about 20 minutes to 2 in the afternoon. The wind has died down, and that blast of sunshine feels good, Father.
It's typical of what happens at St. Anne's Shrine. You can wait and you'll get a nice weather, or you can wait, you get bad weather. So we're lucky now we have the sunshine. Thanks be to God. And the sunshine really has been wonderful this summer. We've had a very excellent summer weather-wise.
That's terrific. We got a little view as we began this segment of our program of the historic monument, which has obviously been on that spot for a long, long time.
Yes, it's been renewed and reset a number of times. And it's a good, it tells us very well what happened here in 1666, how the French built the fort.
And right here is about the view you're going to get when you come to visit St. Anne's Shrine. You pull up here and there are plenty of places to park and so many things to see that as Father and I were walking across the road, he commented, "My goodness, there's even more things around here than I remember sometimes," but that's because they keep adding things. Now, where are we walking now?
We're walking in the open-air pavilion, and this is a protection against bad weather. We have sides on this pavilion. When the weather is bad, the crowd is necessarily a little smaller. We lower the sides and we're protected. But we also have pews on the outside, and we can see between 400 and 500 in the total area when it's necessary, and many times there are that many people here on Sundays.
And we're approaching a very special chapel.
The chapel was built in the early 1900s, and it's a beautiful piece of architecture, and it has been here and it's very popular. We must always maintain it, and we're also going to maintain the open air pavilion. We're going to do some work this fall on it to kind of restructure it and re-strengthen it, making sure that the wind won't take it down.
It's a tabernacle of sorts, isn't it? Huh?
In a way, yes, it is. And it's one of the few like it in the United States. It's a very special structure.
I imagine people have taken a lot of photographs. Does anybody ever send you pictures that they've taken here?
Yes, we have pictures of people that people took way back in the late 1800s, 1895, 97, and of course in the early 1900s.
It's great to have that as a kind of a chronicle, huh?
It sure is, yes. I love to look at the old pictures. It's absolutely touching.
And over here we have a gazebo. That's obviously been on the property for a long time as well.
See, this used to be used as a choir, kind of a choir loft. Now, of course, we bring the singers down below here. But in those days, there were no loudspeakers, and so they had to sing from here, and the music was from here.
I see a bell up in the top there. Do you ever ring it?
We ring it every time there's a mass.
Do you really? Isn't that wonderful? People on the island can come. I imagine they came on horseback and carriages at one time in history.
In the early days, that's right. They came by. Actually, there was no bridge here. They used to have to come across, and they used to come across by boat years ago. But the bridge has been here since the 1930s, early 40s.
I remember seeing in the legend portion of the map we mentioned on the outside of the municipal building in Isle La Motte that there were a couple of ferries operating.
That's right.
One was called the Twins or something, and another one was a sail ferry that they had at one time.
That's right. And in the early days, in the late 1890s, the big boats at Ticonderoga, the Lake Champlain boats, landed here. We had some beautiful big docks over here to my right, and sometimes there would be as many as 500-600 people on one boat. They were really large boats, and they'd come here for pilgrimages way back then in the early 1900s.
Some of those boats have been preserved in some museums around the country.
In Shelburne Museum, they have one of them. The Ticonderoga is there. It's a nice big boat. Yeah.
And that's a wonderful experience for school kids to go down there. They just celebrated a big anniversary down there at Shelburne within the past few weeks as we're taping this program toward the end of September. And it's always a kick to go in there and see what you missed the last time around.
Beautiful, very, very educational. Now, this little grotto here was built by a non-Catholic, Mr. Gid Stanhope, our neighbor, and we extended it because the candles would blow out. So this is in memory of Gid Stanhope, who was a wonderful, good neighbor, and we had good relationship with him and his family.
And it mentions on a plaque up above the name of Carl Merchant. I'm amazed that I can see that far.
Yes.
Boy, see, I've been blessed in many ways here. I think I got my vision back, Calvin.
The Merchants were instrumental in putting on the addition, and in memory of Carl, who was a great fan of St. Anne's Shrine, along with his family.
As I mentioned before, earlier in our program, this place is special in more ways than we could ever mention in a 90-minute program, but among those ways is the fact that there are little nooks and crannies and cubby holes where people can walk off alone as a family or as a couple or alone. And be with their thoughts and their prayers.
That's right. Many come here needing to be alone and to think things out, especially with marital problems and family problems. And so they come here and bring their petitions to Almighty God in peace and quiet and calm.
As we said before, this is a wonderful place, a very historic place. This tremendous chapel, which you will soon be seeing the inside of, the outdoor area where masses are held all during the summer season at St. Anne's Shrine. And behind where Father and I are standing, a very interesting statue which hasn't been here all that long, Father.
2 years, Kateri Tekakwitha, a wonderful man from Burlington, as with the other statues, decided that we should have her here since the Indians were here before the whites, and he brought her the little statue. We're going to do a little bit of work on her in the winter, and she is blessed. She's been declared blessed by Rome in anticipation of the day when she'll be canonized and put in the book of the canon of saints, a list of saints. And meanwhile, many people come to her and ask her for favors, especially those of Indian descent. They love their Kateri Tekakwitha.
Canonization is a process that many non-Catholics may not be totally familiar with, although in the last few weeks, with the passing of Mother Teresa, there's a great deal of talk about it, and the process has been explained in some of the leading news magazines. But let's talk about how that process works.
Well, the name is brought to Rome, and there's a special congregation, special group, committee, which studies the person and their whole life, and this committee that started now, some of the cardinals of the United States are pushing Rome to accelerate the process of sanctity, of sanctification, of being listed in the canon of the saints. But that's a slow process. Rome works slowly and deliberately, and so I'm not so sure how much faster they're going to be able to push the process.
Well, Rome has been around for a long, long time, and not too many people in too big a hurry to get things done. And
That's right.
Although many of us would like to see some of our favorite people, like Mother Teresa, achieve sainthood quickly, it may not happen right away.
It'll come, and I'm sure that someday she will be put in the canon of saints, but I think we won't be able to hasten it. Rome is going to do it when they're ready.
You know, we might as well talk about that for some time. As it turned out, Diana died shortly before Mother Teresa died, and some people were afraid that the spotlight wouldn't swing back on to this wonderful little person who touched so many lives while she was here on earth and will continue to touch many after she's gone.
Oh, wonderful. I think that she was a great person, and I think that she's left her mark on society, especially in the care of the poor, the sick, the suffering, and the needy.
And that's where it starts, you know.
That's right, yeah.
As you can see, we're now inside this very special chapel. Father, we were talking about Mother Teresa, and you mentioned the name of Dr. Bradshaw, and I think that deserves a little mention because he was a very special person to people here in northern New York and in Vermont.
He built 3 cancer clinics. He was a cancer specialist, and he, during the last 2 or 3 months of his life, was here very, very often, praying for his own cure, and as he helped others, he asked God to help him. The Lord's will be done. The Lord called him, but I'm sure that he has spoken to very many of his fellow surgeons and fellow cancer doctors. We had the funeral here. It was our privilege to bid him farewell from here. He was buried in Ohio, and great man, and I'm sure the Lord has a special place for him.
Those people who we hope have become our regular viewers across the Tri-County area of northern New York will be familiar with his name because we did spend a whole day at the Alice Hyde Hospital in Malone. And he was so instrumental in getting the cancer unit started there. What a wonderful new facility it is. And they were hoping, as he was hoping, that he would be around when it opened a few weeks later. But again, as you said just moments ago, it wasn't God's will. But the man did have an impact, and his memory means something to all of us.
Oh, yes. And his wonderful wife, Molly, will continue his great tradition, his great gift, his great contribution to society. It was a great privilege to know him.
Let's talk a little more about this precious chapel, as my dad would say. That was one of his favorite words, and sometimes that's the word you have to use.
It is precious, it is sacred, it is blessed. We had a holy hour here on Monday night, and I couldn't help but think as we were all praying together, how many souls were touched through this lovely little chapel. And for years, there wasn't much going on here, but in the past 25, 30 years, there's been a renewal of faith, of hope, and of love. And the chapel is the heart of the shrine, really, and all the wonderful liturgies that take place here certainly are a source of great blessing to all who come.
What do we know about the construction of this chapel? You told us when it was constructed, but how it was put together and...
It was done by carpenters from Swanton, Vermont, and you see the nice little strips of wood. Every strip of wood was nailed together, and it really hasn't moved since it was built. It was done very, very professionally and very architecturally well designed. It's a great tribute to the carpenters who built it.
And as we mentioned before, the entire front of the chapel is open for a good reason.
Yes, we used to have doors there, but then it would hide some of the people couldn't see too well from the outside, so we decided to put this electric door, and it's a great blessing.
Oh, I didn't realize that. A
Yeah.
modern convenience here, huh?
Yes, that's right. Yes, and it was a wise move because the place is wide open now. People can see what's going on.
That is a metal door that has motorized.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah,
Nobody has to pull on a rope or anything to get it down, huh?
That's right. Yes.
Well, we still ring the bell by hand, right?
Oh yes. We have another big bell that we hope to put up someday in the bell tower. That's one of the dreams that we have to a bell that came from another church, a bigger bell.
Now I didn't realize till right now when you said bell tower, and I looked up and see that there is a bell tower here.
Yes,
is
that's
that
right.
part of the original structure?
Yes, it is. Yes, but we probably wouldn't put the bell there. We'd put it in a special bell tower outside.
Oh, I see.
Because it would be too hard on the building.
Yeah, there probably was never a bell here anyway.
No, it was on the outside.
All right, we'll look at other parts of this chapel now. Shall we just walk through and you can describe things as we go, Father?
This is a plaque board here, and these are all benefactors who gave years ago, who helped us when we were just getting organized in developing the shrine. Now we have a plaque board by the statue of the Blessed Mother in the Way of the Cross and also in the new building. And here we have the votive lights. People come and want to leave a little offering and also a chance for the saints to hear their prayers. We have St. Gerard here, the patron of mothers, and many people invoke him, especially for their children. Somebody donated a statue of St. Jude. We're going to put up a grotto for him, but it's not quite finished, so we put him in here in the chapel with the Blessed Mother and St. Joseph and St. Gerard. The crutches have been left here by people who were healed, and the braces, we don't have a great quantity of them, but they've been left here for a number of years. We have miracles take place here. We don't broadcast them. I think a miracle is between the one who receives the miracle and God, and so we low-key it because it is God's work and not our work. Miracles that are performed by God's help and Jesus' love and goodness.
And I dare say that there's been more healing here than a lot of people would ever realize. As you said, those silent moments, healings of the heart and soul that you could never hang a memento on the wall, but if you were to talk to these people and they were to answer you honestly, there's been a great deal of healing right here at St. Anne's.
There are many, many healings. People are healed constantly, and especially spiritual healings, people who've been away from the church. We have a priest hearing confessions, sacrament of penance here on Sunday mornings and other occasions for hours. And only the Lord knows how many return to him, but we're sure that they return. And we thank God for that, because that's one of the main purposes of the shrine, to bring people to God and God to people.
You told us that you believe there are, how many did you say every year, 50 or 60,000?
Yeah, 60, 65, 70,000 people who come here. And even today, you notice there were a number of people still here visiting and praying, and asking God's blessings through the intercession of good Saint Anne and the Blessed Mother.
Earlier in our program, Father described some of the areas that people may come from, but as I listened to him, of course, our program, the camera would stop as we'd move from place to place, and Father would go over and talk to people, and I heard accents from the four corners of the earth. I heard beautiful British accents and French accents and Southern accents.
That's right. They come from practically every state of the Union and many countries. There were people here today from England and others from Ireland, and some from Australia, from New Zealand this summer. And they came to see the other side of the world.
When you talk about spreading the gospel, I think this is a great place to start from.
Well, we're blessed to be able to do it, and we thank God. If we've been able to do it, it's not because of ourselves, but because of God placing us here for a time and for a purpose.
And if you think you've seen and heard everything there is to see and hear about St. Anne's Shrine, no, not yet. We're going to keep you with us for a short time more. We'll continue our tour in just a moment. Our program today at St. Anne's Shrine in Isle La Motte has been one tracing history. And if you want to get right down to the bottom line, come into the little history room here. Father, right inside the door, we see part of the original blueprints for the chapel our viewers saw just a few moments ago, drawn in 1909.
That's right. So that gives us an absolute right date for the building.
And we talked about the Twin Boys ferry that used to bring people over here. Up in the left-hand corner is a picture of that ferry from Chazy Landing, New York, all the way over to Isle La Motte, and one of the old cars.
How about that, huh? Yeah.
And next to it, who do we have here?
Father Curly-Dew, and that's the first little chapel that was built in the late 1890s. And it burnt, and then that's when the new one was rebuilt in 1909.
And here is the replica of the fort made by school children that you talked about a while ago. Isn't it wonderful?
Isn't it nice? The little children had a lot of imagination, and they donated this to us so we could show it to the people who come here in the summer.
And I'm sure people can see the page as Calvin scans over it, the replica Fort St. Anne, constructed by the students in grades 4, 5, and 6 in the art class, 92-93 school year at Isle La Motte Elementary School. I see they're building a beautiful new school.
They are, yes. They've been needing a school for a long time, and finally their prayer is going to be answered, which will be nice for them.
As we rode over here, I asked Calvin, where do the kids go to high school from Isle La Motte? And he rattled off about 5 different places they
go mostly to Northeast Central School in Champlain. Most of the students are there, and they're very happy there. It's a wonderful school. That's Calvin's area.
Oh, yes, we hear a great deal about that school and all the other churches and schools. Calvin, like so many people over there and over here, are very much involved in their communities, and that's why these small communities have survived. Come over a little closer over here and tell us what we have in this group of things.
Well, we have a marble statue of St. Anne, which was given to us by the Carters, who led pilgrimages here for 35 years, the Northern New York Knights of Columbus. And the others are all historical documents, and we have receipt books, and we have a little history of the shrine here, and wonderful memorials of days gone by.
And if you don't believe that the Ticonderoga docked here, we've got a picture to prove it, Father.
Yes, right there. And it's precious when you see there weren't any trees here then compared to what we have now. Now we have a lot of trees that have grown over the years.
It's amazing just when you stop to think of how many changes there have been since you came here.
The Lord uses us as instruments, and He wanted these changes, so He inspired us to make these changes.
See, the Lord uses you as an instrument, and He is the virtuoso. But you're playing that instrument pretty well these days, I'll tell you what, Father.
Well, thank God that we can be used as His instruments. He needs us. We are His hands in society.
This is a nice little history room as we swing around. It isn't extremely large, but it does have some significant things. And over in this corner is the story of that wonderful gold statue, and how you talk about an amazing story of how that statue ended up here. Isn't that terrific?
It's almost unbelievable because there were so many people wanting it to stay in Burlington, and by all rights, That's probably where it could be, but it's here, and I think it's because many more people can view it and can pray to it and pray to the Lord through the statue of the Blessed Mother.
And if you want to see that entire history, you can come here and read a page directly out of the Burlington Free Press, whose headlines blare out, "Fire Destroys Catholic Cathedral." There are other pictures of the statue making its way here, and then finally the statue being erected, and it's very, very special.
The very interesting thing is that it never burnt, and that it was preserved. The original gold was on it. We re-gilded it, but the original gold was on it when we erected it, and then of course we re-gilded it once it was erected.
And in the middle, below our line of sight, is a rather historic Bible, I believe.
Oh, it's an old Bible that was given to us, and it's a treasure here in this history room.
And as we move farther, we see Sunday afternoons in Isle La Motte, an interesting study.
Yes, it shows us the old days of the pilgrimages by boat, and then we have a more recent approach, pilgrimages in the more modern times in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
And as we move over toward the corner of the room, we see some of the things that have been found on the ground, starting with that beautiful old wooden pump.
Yes, and then of course in the glass case we have relics of the old fort and what they used to erect the fort and to keep it going. We also have some Indian heads, some arrowheads, a few of those that were found here on the grounds.
We invite, of course, people to come here to St. Anne's Shrine in Isle La Motte, read all the legends associated with these artifacts. Every one is numbered, so they're easy to spot. Fascinating for the older people in the family and for the young children as well. We have a few gold-plated tools on the top here, implements.
That was the groundbreaking of the new building, the saw and the hammer and the shovel that we use for the new building.
I still think that new building is one of the greatest miracles ever for St. Anne's Shrine.
A miracle and a mystery, and we can't explain it except through God's love and God's goodness and the generosity of the people who were inspired by the Lord to share and to help us to build it and to pay for it.
And finally, on this wall, you see a variety of pictures of course, your picture on the top and a montage of wonderful photographs that take you back more than 2 or 3 years, I'll tell you.
Back to 1956, and through all these years, the wonderful experiences, the wonderful people we've met, and the great blessing of being here at St. Anne's Shrine all these years. All I can say is thank you, Lord, and thank you to our wonderful friends and benefactors and the news media. We can't forget them. They have been just absolutely wonderful, the New York side and the Vermont side. And also, of course, the Catholic press and the daily presses, too, have been very generous.
Well, it must have been very important for me to be here today because Calvin has dragged me by my shirt tails, told me we were coming over here for weeks, and we finally made the appointment and came here. And I must say that my life personally has been enriched by the experience not only of visiting St. Anne's Shrine, but of meeting you, Father Boucher.
Well, the privilege is mine, and my privilege to have Calvin and you here today, and I'm very grateful for your time and grateful for the time the Lord has given me here, and I hope He'll give me a few more years.
And once again, just before we wrap up this edition of Our Little Corner, let us tell people when the shrine is open annually so they can plan their pilgrimages here in the coming year.
May 15th to October 15th, and they can come in a little sooner if they want to and come a little later if they want to.
Visit early, visit often, bring your friends, spread the message of goodwill from St. Anne's Shrine in Isle La Motte. Father, thank you so much again for your time.
God bless you, and God bless Calvin and all our friends and benefactors.
Thank you all for viewing our program called Our Little Corner. Who knows where we'll be next time?